Hello, Len, can you hear me? Excellent. I unplugged my mic. So much for the technology. I was getting a terrible echo, so it would have been impossible for me to have deal with it. So I'd be hearing myself speak, and then I would be having to try and respond. So I don't know. This is my. Oh well, I'll have to go with the old tech. Okay, people. Cheers. Having a martini. I know some people like it, some people don't. But I had the non-alcoholic beer last time, so I'm trying to please everyone. We'll have to do a bit of a comparison to see whether the unhappy hour with the martini is a better situation than the unhappy hour without alcohol. It's an interesting question. Yeah, Daniel was helping me all morning with my my mic, and now it got the big echo happening. So, but people seem to be hearing me okay without the mic. So I don't know how much value added that it has. Uh, so extra dirty. That's when you put the juice of the olives in it, right? No, I forgot to do that. I don't mind that, but I go for the classic. Okay, so what I did last time, last video. So we just came from the video about the countdown. So we have the countdown, and I'm not sure people understand what I'm doing with the countdown, but I'm trying to sort of parcel things in understandable chunks to get people to sort of follow the deception, the chronology of the deception. Because for many years, I sort of thought it was a mistake. That was my impression, that everyone just got ahead of themselves. They just made a mistake. They thought the ground penetrating radar detected remains, and they just started doing this. But the more you look at it, the more you see the orchestrated attempts to deceive, and even worse, the institutions that are enabling it. And that's a very important question. Why are these institutions doing this? Because you can sort of see why the band is doing it, like it's dishonest and so on. But there's money to be made about this. This is what it's all about. Follow the money. And they're making money off of getting people to feel terrible sympathy about what's happened, and they're gonna play that card constantly. They're constantly playing this card and coming up against it, as I have been doing. I just don't pay attention to them anymore. This is just their tactic, and they're going to do that. So, okay, we understand that. And it's nothing, for people who are going to go all Aboriginal this, Aboriginal that on it. It really isn't something to do with Aboriginal people. It's to do with any person or group who is given the incentives to act this way, and no one does anything to challenge them. And it just creates a terrible situation, because we're really not being, to use the diversity, inclusion, and equity word, inclusive. It's not inclusive at all, because it gives a different standard. It allows these neo-tribal elites and their Aboriginal industry associates to get away with murder. That's what's happening. And it's not good for anyone to be in this alternate reality. We all need to be held to account for what we do. Everyone is accountable. And if you're not accountable, you become more and more removed from the social fabric. So we want to bring everyone into the social fabric. No one is special. Everyone is some people don't contribute, but we want to have a world where everyone contributes, and not everyone can contribute equally because of their circumstances. And just looking at what happened at Calgary City Hall last Friday, I'm not sure if people watched that footage, but I had a discussion with a woman who admitted to me that she had fetal alcohol syndrome. She told me that. But she was participating as well as she could. She was an amazing woman. And I'm not being condescending, because with like her limited kind of faculties, she was trying to the 100% of her ability to figure this out. And we had an incredibly meaningful interaction because of that. And that's what it's all about. You know, some people are, everyone has different talents and attributes, and you know, we're all in this together. But what happens with this ridiculous stuff that's going on with Kamloops, it means that we're not all operating in the same kind of universe where we can critique one another, we can learn, we can change our behavior. That's really important. You do something unwise and someone tells you, you know, stop doing that's not a very good thing that you're doing. And you might get reactive and say, no, I was fine. But then you think about it and you go, and a number of other people tell you, yeah, that wasn't very good what you did. You can learn, and you can learn how to adjust your behavior to fit in with others. And that's kind of the ideal of humanity, is to be able to do that. And we are depriving Aboriginal people of this when we're doing this ridiculous pandering, mollycoddling, infantilization. You know, just stop it. And I hope Aboriginal people understand what I'm doing, because it's not with ill intent at all. It's trying to get things back on track and stop the terrible manipulation that people that in that video were doing. And there's a lot of people who were trying to manipulate people about this. And it's my hope that, you know, when we come to May 27th, 2021, we will try and put that behind us and move forward. I know that's a big ask because there's a lot at stake here. There's, for people to be fighting this hard on this file, there's a lot at stake. And essentially and I was just thinking about this, trying to figure out why this is happening. And there's essentially three reasons. There's the neo-tribal renterism reason. And that's something that that's the theoretical framework that I've developed about Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal relations, that instead of Aboriginal people being part of the working class and pushing for changes on that basis, they've been entered into this legal realm where lawyers make all these arguments, and it's a circulation economy where those in power just give resources to those they're closely related to, and then the marginalized underclass doesn't have access to the resources that they need. So that's the first reason, and that's the Aboriginal industry is engaged in this neo-tribal renterism kind of process. The second one is the more general wokeism kind of aspect, which is we have this kinds of developments that are happening. From my perspective, it seems to be a movement away from class politics to identity politics, which is subjective. And what you see is people making arguments that the way to improve conditions for people is to affirm their subjective identities, not to try to develop working class politics so that people are more able to get the resources that they need to survive and live meaningfully in the world. So that was a shift that happened in the 1960s at the hands of someone by the name of Herbert Marcuse. So Herbert Marcuse, basically said that he'd given up on the working class and he was going to focus on the subjective identities as the way to bring about the revolution. But of course, if you take your historical materialist position seriously, that doesn't work, because it's the working class that is, creates the value in society, and has an actual material basis, unlike whether you're a man who believes you're a woman, and everyone's got to affirm that. And Aboriginal's the same thing, is that you're choosing to identify as Aboriginal. And anyone really can identify as Aboriginal. I could identify as Aboriginal if I wanted to. I could, for example, be looking through my record, all my family papers, and discover that my mother had this affair with an Aboriginal guy, which makes me Aboriginal. That could happen. Just saying. Hey, so then I identify as Aboriginal, but I'm no different than I was before. I just have this subjective identity, and I'm demanding people affirm that, and the genocide survivor identity is part of that. So that's the second reason. So the first one was neo-tribal renterism. Second one is identity politics, which wokeism, which has become a big part of society. And so therefore everyone's got to kowtow to everything an Aboriginal person says, because otherwise you're an oppressor. And then the third reason is the international dimension, which is the breakdown of sovereignty, national sovereignty, because of the international forces, which appear to be wanting to ally with Aboriginal groups to have capitalist kinds of developments where profits are going to be taken back to international entities, China, etc. And Aboriginal people are being used as a useful tool in this exercise. And it's largely an alignment of what would be called international capitalist class forces, as opposed to national capitalist class forces. Anyway, that's a kind of a historical materialist argument, but it's still, I think there's international dimension to this, and you kind of see it a little bit in the various things that are happening. Anyway, yeah. So that's kind of like, and that's just a speculative thing. Someone says Israel. Oh, don't make me go there. Yeah, that's the most toxic or file that to go into, and we've already had a lot of trouble on this file. Francis Widdowson has already had a lot of trouble in various ways. But yeah, that would be an example of the international. Yeah, like okay, but I'm very interested in this idea about why are we accepting these arguments that are being made that are so obviously false, and why are people forcing us to accept those arguments? And it's a complex question, but those are the three kinds of things that I've seen as, sort of like the neo-tribal renterism, demoralization of the population for whatever reason. People want us to be demoralized. And thirdly, international forces. So that's something that needs to be developed to try to understand this, because usually countries encourage their people to be patriotic and want people to stand behind the nationality of their country. What we're seeing is the opposite. We're being encouraged to hang our heads in shame and see ourselves as perpetrators of genocide, when there really is not very good evidence for genocide. And that's why you had the 215, is because finally, and you can hear that with Rose, what's her name, Roseanne Archibald, is that her name? But the AFN chief, he's going, we've got evidence of genocide now. So, but we don't have the 215 or any of the clandestine burials. Not one clandestine burial has been substantiated. That genocidal thing doesn't really hold anymore, except for the other arguments about population transfer and sterilization and intent to do all these things. And so this is all. Anyway, so what I showed in that video was this, I believe is the second segment that I've done now, which is the period from May 21st to May 28th, which is looking at the deception that is perpetrated by the band, of course, and that is upheld by, and using Sarah Bollier as an expert, which she's not. And then you got the institutions that are acting against it, which is the media, the coroner, and the RCMP. And we're going to see other institutions as we go on. And that ended on May 28th, and then we're going to get into sort of the June period in the next segment, June 2021, with a bunch of new institutions and a bunch of sort of new attempts at demoralization and neo-tribal rentierism and international forces, the most significant being the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People or Peoples, which was pushed through on, I believe it was June 21st, 2021. So that got momentum because of the Kamloops claim. Okay, so let's take some questions. So first kind of comment, people are proud and selfish. That's why. And I'm trying to remember what that comment was. Well, is that about why we're being encouraged to see ourselves as people who perpetrated genocide against Aboriginal people? Because that seems to be the main claim, is that genocide was occurred, we must feel responsible, and we must react to make things right. And proud and selfish, it's not very specific, and it's like, I don't know if everyone's proud. We all, to some extent, I guess, are selfish in that we all have to maintain ourselves as beings that are surviving. You have to consider your own comfort and everything when you're in the world, but certainly many people are less selfish than others. So Hillary says, ghosts, Indian graveyards. I know from Scooby-Doo the culprit is a real estate agent. Yeah, so land is at the bottom of it all, really. It's about a struggle over land and making a case whereby rent can be charged. That's the Aboriginal industry's end game, is they want to get in place uncertainty so that they can charge rent for the that house you think you own. Well, not so fast, and now you got to pay rent to the landlord, and that is whomever Aboriginal group's traditional territory that you're sitting on. Yep. So Janice says you likely have two mics on, a separate one and the other one on your laptop or computer. Yeah, I don't know. Daniel helped me this morning to try to get things sorted out on the other video, and now it looks like things have backfired. I just can never. There's all these technical things that I just cannot get my head around. I don't know. I'm just not a person who's really good at this, and it just takes me so much time to sort things out, and then every time I have to go through the same thing all over again. It's like Groundhog Day. Hey, Kathy. And have you read Tom Sowell's Social Justice Fallacies? I haven't. I'm very familiar with many of the arguments that he makes. I'm an admirer of many of the things that he argues. And he came up with the term, one of my favorites, race hustler. So a race hustler is someone who uses accusations of racism to extract concessions from others. And I got into trouble at Mount Royal because I called Racial Advocacy MRU, the anonymous, supposedly student-led group, and also the MRU Anti-Racism Coalition. I called them race hustlers, who were those people that were in there, because that's what they were doing. And then Gabrielle Weaselhead got really upset because she thought that I was calling her a race hustler when I didn't. I just had the hashtag race hustler, and I was referring to those other two. Now, she might be a race hustler. I just hadn't investigated that, but I knew that the other two were definitely race hustlers. Anyway, I got a harassment finding against me because of the race hustling hashtag, which I developed from Thomas Sowell. False reports of crimes is public mischief, 5 years in prison. Interesting. But the problem is who's going to charge if that's true, that they falsely. Well, you listen to Joanne Archibald there, the chief of she's going, it's a crime scene. Crimes need to be investigated. So she's making a claim about a crime, but who's going to charge her for doing that? I'm asked, what do I think of Mary Simon? I think Mary Simon is a useful idiot. That's what I think of Mary Simon. And she's a figurehead. Like it's absurd that they have. This is the problem with Aboriginal politics: is you have supposedly Aboriginal nations that have their own kind of system, and then you have people who are part of an Aboriginal nation sitting in as the chief ceremonial role. Are they representative of all Canadians, which includes Aboriginal people, or do they see themselves as being representative of the Aboriginal group to which they are related to through kinship? And this is the big problem with tribal entities within a nation state. It's a question of your, I don't know if loyalty is the right word, but your, do you see yourself as a representative of Canadians, or do you see yourself as a representative of Aboriginal groups? And Mary Simon has done things that show her to be a representative of the Aboriginal agenda, and not of Canadians. And so I think that's a huge mistake. Like it's a difference between ancestry and identity, is that you can have ancestry, just like I said, I might have Aboriginal ancestry, but I don't see myself as aligned with any particular group. I see myself as a Canadian who, if I were in public office, I would work to defend all Canadians equally in terms of the principles that would apply to everyone, not preferentially to one person over another. So that's kind of the ideal democratic kind of position. Yeah. And someone says Israel. Yeah, Israel is one of the international forces. So all outside countries are outside forces that are trying to influence the Canadian system, and we should be aware of that. And people who live within Canada, if they are dual citizens, this seems to me to be a real problem, because are they aligned with the other country, or are they aligned with Canada? And it's just about having to put all your eggs in one basket, or are you going to kind of spread your eggs out into a couple of different baskets and choose whichever one is the most expedient? That's kind of annoying for people when they see other people doing that, because they have no option. This is all they have and that's my situation, is that I'm stuck with Canada, whether I like it or not. Is it actually capitalist or technocratic? It's a good question. Get out the street epistemology mats. That's my answer to all these things. I would say capitalist, but I'm open to hearing the technocratic argument. I was born in Vancouver. So Bog Katie says, I was born in Vancouver. I identify as Musqueam and demand my house now. Yeah, well, this identity question is very interesting. You know what? And I was talking to David Newhouse a number of years ago. I guess that was in 2017. Was that long ago? Anyway, I was at Mount Royal. I had organized an event with David and Massimo Pigliucci and Sean England and Root Gorlick, and David was explaining how you could identify as Aboriginal, and there was three ways. One, you have ancestry. Two, you're adopted. Or three, the band has declared that you are one of them. So those three ways. So, and the ancestry question is very interesting because we hear all these arguments about whether that's enough. Like if you have one great grandparent who's Aboriginal, is that enough ancestry? Sassafras says you should read up on how the Rapa Nui people took back their island recently. I visited there for my 40th birthday and it was fascinating. Okay. Yeah, so if you just want to add more commentary in the chat, that would be an interesting thing to kind of consider as to why that's an interesting case. Yeah. Oh man, I don't drink, but that sure looks good. This is good. I won't lie. I won't lie to you. Yeah, and I got the 3 olives. I always love the olives. The olives get martini liquid soaked in, get infused, get an olive infused with martini flavor. Liars gotta lie in packs, says Salty Berry Apothecary. It's easier to lie when you've got backing. We have a worn out rubber stamp as a king. This is King Charles? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how many monarchists are on the call here. And I used to be very virulently anti-monarchist. But, you know, I've softened my edges, my rough edges, because following George Orwell, I've come to appreciate traditional things more than I used to. But still, I really find that the monarchy to be, it really bothers me fundamentally. Yes, so Denny Loverin says ideological subversion, demoralization of Canada. And that was something that Simon Hergott and I were looking at in our documentary, was the ideological subversion, which is the 4 stages: demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. And the genocide accusations are demoralization. And and then we have the kind of the funding of Aboriginal groups and so on. That's destabilization. And we're heading towards crisis. And we need to, you know, if we don't want to have a civil war or violence, we need to bring back discussion to be able to figure out what's going on. And that's a huge danger right now, is that we are having all these attempts to prevent people from discussing things. And that just causes all sorts of anger, resentment, preventing us from considering important contributions to the conversation. It's really disturbing what's happening now with all these pieces of legislation which are intent on stopping people from saying what they believe to be true. 2 Roostered says, 12 Roostered, sorry. We need God to reject this sense of collective shame. God redeems each individual. and everyone is responsible for themselves. How do you know that? What's the evidence for that? That would be my response. Individualism can be bad if taken too far to become selfish, etc. But if it is in check, it helps us to become responsible. It's a balancing act. And it's interesting talking to people in terms of how much people value individual freedoms versus having some collective kinds of supports for collectivism. And you need both. You definitely need both, but it's a question of weighting, the proper weighting. Jesus is Lord. How do you know that? What evidence is there for that? Put myself on the strongly disagree. You think the First Nations were really first? Everyone's moved around a lot from the beginnings of migrations. So, and First Nations, of course, I've never accepted the term First Nations. They're not nations. Nations have particular characteristics, and Aboriginal groups don't have those characteristics. They're tribal groupings related through kinship. Do you see Canada ever getting back to reality, specifically in schools? Depression is growing and a lot are losing hope. Yeah, it's unknown. You got to fight like you believe it will happen. Because you need the idea to get you through. You're attached to an idea that gets you through all the humiliations and so on, if you're fighting for an idea. And it's hard not to get dragged down. I'm not exactly an optimistic person, but I try to face, as I've said to people many times, face the world as it is, not that as I would like it to be. It's hard because you need to have everyone needs their various everyone needs their medication. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Yeah, but how do we know that's true? It might just be wishful thinking. Hillary says, relax about the tech. Your setup is perfect. Yeah, like I don't have high production values here. And the more people try to help me to do things, the more it becomes this big cumbersome thing that I now got to sort out all the technological problems. And I find it really, that's what really frustrates me. And so I just go back to what has worked, like what's worked in the past. Do they want us to be genocidal? Do they understand where that would lead? They want us to accept the idea that non-Aboriginal people imparted genocide against the Aboriginal population. There's a number of people who want this. And I find that a very strange type of situation. I don't know if anyone else finds that strange. Because what you used to have is you used to have your leaders, encouraging you to be proud of your country. That was because of the general playbook. And you can see why, because, if you want to get people to go into war and fight for the boundaries, maintain the integrity of the nation state, you need to do that, because so that they'll fight for it. So basically, we can conclude then the opposite, that there's people trying to get us not to want to fight for our country? And who are those people and what is their agenda? Well, international forces and authoritarianism. That's probably Bezmenov's type of understanding, is that if you don't fight, you're going to have authoritarianism begin to insert itself, to have power, assert power over you, and then you can have whoever's in power can do whatever they want to you, because you have no protections anymore. These things are being taken away, and people should be really worried about this, especially restrictions on speech. If we can't have discussion, we're not going to be able to figure out how to move forward, and we're going to be subject to authoritarian types of rulers. Sorry, I just went down. So Hillary says, what happened after your phone went dead at the convergence? 2 aggressive men were in your face trying to push you off their turf. What then? So Nuala Moonsnail, Kathy Drake, she has a live stream that kept on going after mine died, which you can watch. So that was, yes, there was kind of a bit of give and take with these 2 Aboriginal men. It was nothing particularly threatening about it. They were upset because they thought we were being disrespectful. So that's the word is. And I can see their point, because they're saying that they want to have this kind of ceremonial thing, and here we are criticizing it. And they maybe could say it's like going into a church and yelling at the preacher. What are you doing? There is no God, this kind of thing. And that's very disrespectful to do that, because you're going into their place. Now, where I would take issue with these 2 men is they're taking over a secular place with their demands for respect of their spiritual beliefs, which are having an impact on everyone in Canada. So it's the fact that the city is allowing this to happen, and the Confluence, or Fort Calgary at the Confluence, are allowing this to happen. They're being captured by this indigenization and decolonization agenda, which is then being used against those people who are not these neo-tribal elites. Like, I'm not going to say against non-Aboriginal, because it's really being used against the society. And so we are within our rights to draw attention to this problem. So that's what happened. And then there was the woman, the elder, who was wearing the Ukrainian garb. And she was a very offensive person. And she came up and she was pretending. This is what happens all the time. And as soon as I sort of see this happening, I'm going, this is not what it seems. She's pretending that she's going to be spreading love to us. And she just hogs the microphone and talks endlessly about nonsense. And then I was trying to get a word in edgewise. And finally I said, do you think the truth is important? And she said, yes. And then I said, do you believe that the remains of 215 children have been found at Kamloops? And she said, yes. And then when we started to have an argument, like a discussion about it, she said, I was closed and was not open to her position, and she was leaving. And then Kathy got assaulted by her associate. So it's just bullshit from the beginning to the end, using compassion to manipulate people. That's what's going on. So piss off, pretend elder with your Ukrainian garb. Technocracy now, maybe. Yeah, the technocratic, this is kind of got an anti-democratic sentiment. Like, we do need technocrats and various, engineers are very important, to make sure the bridges don't fall down and so on. But it's difficult when you enter into like political discussions and someone's telling you you're not an expert, so you should shut up. Like, I'm not an expert on the residential schools, so therefore I shouldn't say anything about them. Well, like, who's an expert on the residential schools? Sean Carlton and Egon Sinclair and all these orange shirts. Yes, we should end dual citizenship. Yes, that's a seriously bad idea. Like, what happens if a war breaks out between the two countries that people have citizenship with each country? How are you going to fight in that war? It doesn't make any sense at all. And that's part of the watering down of the nation state. No countries, instead technique. Yeah, like a technocratic class, professional managerial class. Often that's the words that's used. What's your cat's name? I see the cat in the front. So there's two cats. The black and white one is Kenny, and the gray one is Hugo. And it was probably Kenny because he hangs about. A lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth is time to put on its pants. Yeah, this is a huge problem with the Kamloops case, and that's why the institutional failure is so terrible. Is because the institutions should have acted. Like the coroner is a good example. The RCMP is a good example. They were alerted early on, and they could have just made a statement about how GPR does not confirm remains. But they didn't. They allowed it to happen. They pandered. And this is like capture. This is institutional capture. Someone says, I'm overall in favor of the monarchy. I'm not. I'm opposed to it. But I do understand people do like it a lot. It's traditional authority, and that's the oldest form of authority. And perhaps it's not a bad thing to have some forms of traditional authority in the system, just as a glue to hold the society together. However, the wealth is a big problem. So, that's the issue, is that, especially not so much in Canada, but in Great Britain, massive amounts of wealth are held by the aristocracy. Oh. Kathy says, God save the king. We'll have to disagree on that one. On two fronts. Oh, she's kidding. King Charles III gives Trump a state dinner and Canada a land. Yes, like, come on. At least be a proper king. If you're going to be a king, be a proper king and not some woke scold king. The king doesn't care about you. No, he does not. He's too busy giving himself a coffee enema and what other kind of crazy shit does he get up to? Saying that he said about Camilla that he thought of her as a tampon. Oh, sorry. He wished he could be her tampon. Like, who says that? That's crazy. He's a complete dolt. Unbelievable dolt. Inbreeding. It's due to inbreeding. That's a danger in the royal family. It's an embarrassment. Oh, like, at least the queen had some dignity to her. Like, she was, she grew up in a time where, all this duty and stuff, but Charles is just like, oh. Genealogy proves who is Aboriginal through multiple ways. Howard Yang, a change of name act in the Sun newspaper. Denny, hats off for your effort. Yeah, like that's what I'm trying to, pursue this clean. Like I've got two claims that I'm trying to two small claims that I'm trying to pursue. There's no remains confirmed at Kamloops, and there are only two sexes. Those are the two small claims, and the two large claims are Canada is not was not a genocidal country, and trans rights are not human rights. So those are the latter are harder because they involve definitional kinds of things, but the first two are just facts. And because we can't state the facts, this is alarming for our country and for the world. If you can't state facts, it's over. It is seriously over. And so that's why we've got to take this seriously. Is this live or done? It's live. We're live. Monarchy is okay if we had one. If we had one. Yeah, well, we do have one. It's we got the Governor General, who's the monarchy's representative. King Khalif Chuck 3 must be very pleased with Carney's Muslim values or Canadian values comments. Yeah, I don't know what Charles's views are on the Muslim question, but he's probably, you know, he's such a dolt. It's really hard to take, you know, him seriously. You know, it's the inbreeding. Can't help it. How do we know it's true that we need absolute truth? We don't. It's just an argument. It's an intellectual argument. Keep your hopes up. We're winning. I hope so. Like I don't really see that myself. There's a lot of obstacles. I'm just trying to not get demoralized. And you can't get demoralized. You just have to. What does it matter? Like you act as if you can do it, and that gives you strength and it makes you feel better about things. Gives you some sense of control. And I heard this, and I've talked to this to many people who, you know, suffer from depression and so on, anxiety, all these problems we're facing, and everyone's. I don't know how many people have these difficulties, but it is something that faces many people that I know. See, I don't want to really talk about myself because then it's used against me, but you know, I suffer from these things too. I'm not immune from it. I heard this thing on the radio once, and I think it was the CBC, because I used to listen to CBC a lot. And this guy said, you know, how do people go through all sorts of horrible things? They go through genocides, they go through terrible disasters, they have all these tragedies. How do they survive? Like, how are they able to overcome these terrible kinds of things that are facing them? And this person said, the moderator said, because in the end, we all are in control of our own mind. And that's the key. You need to gain control over your own mind and learn to think about things in a way that is assists you, like helps you to be more productive, be able to contribute more to other people, to do things that are valuable, than to think about things in a way that cause you problems. And it's easier said. I'm not trying to say it's easy, because it's not. But that's the focus. You need to be in control of your own mind. And we should all strive for that. It's so beautiful to hear you read scripture. You guys, just because I read it doesn't mean that I believe it. You know, I could read anything. Can't we know that we love through something other than our five senses? Can't we know that we love through something other than our five senses? Interesting philosophical point. How does philosophy help us with this? Science and philosophy. How do we know that we love? You know, like, that's a very thought-provoking question. It's a feeling. Love is a feeling, right? So maybe the feeling of love that I have is not love. I like, how does one know that that is love? It's kind of seems to me to be a very difficult question to answer. We got 10 minutes left. I'm trying to keep the unhappy hour to 1 hour. So just letting you know, I'm going to try and stop it at an hour. Oh, and I got my olives. I haven't eaten my olives yet. Because no countries in technocracy. Is that true? If you have a technocracy, there's no country. It's not a country. I'm not sure. And a technocracy is ruled by technocrats, I assume. So it would be whatever the technocrats decide is the most efficient way to have rule. So, for example, Brave New World, if you read Brave New World, that seems to be a technocracy. And I don't know if national sentiment was part of it, that whole thing. Nationalism seems to be quite emotional. Divide and conquer, says Denny. I assume that's kind of demoralization. Okay. Let's see now. Sorry. Can you invite Sarah Bollier to talk on the show? Yes, I can. But she won't. I've tried to communicate with her a number of times. It's not like I haven't tried. She's just gone. And everyone I've known, I know lots of people who've tried to communicate with her. And she doesn't respond to messages. Daniel says, we need people to uphold standards or people start forgetting what it's like without. Right now, many core institutions are just ditching core function principles, free speech included. Yes. At least try to fight for them. You know, that's my kind of motto is, you know, I don't know if I can save things the way they are. Things seem to be in pretty poor state, but at least I'm documenting the destruction that hopefully, you know, future generations can learn from. That's really my goal. You know, and if you look at it that way, you know, if you lose a battle, if you're not successful, it doesn't really matter because you're showing how things are not working properly. You're exposing how things are not working properly. Kathy just reposted her live stream. Yeah, so Kathy, Noodle Moon Snail, it's a really good interaction between this elder and us. She was really a completely arrogant time waster, which again is this kind of condescension that is going on. Is, oh, she's an Aboriginal elder. We can't interrupt her. We can't challenge her. You know, and then of course when you do challenge her, you get this kind of frosty. She's accusing me of being closed when she's there to give us a sermon. But she was not a happy camper. Yeah, so that Kathy's live stream continues. So mine died, Kathy's continues. So Hillary says the two men had no right to approach you and demand you leave. You weren't interfering. They weren't, to be fair to them, they weren't demanding that we leave. They were accosting us for being disrespectful. That was their position. And they were correct. We were being disrespectful. But as Hillary has pointed out before, you shouldn't be sort of railroaded into accepting unacceptable things under the guise of respect. Some things should not be respected. And we had no respect for this nonsense that was going on at City Hall and Fort Calgary at the confluence, because it was doing all these irrational things to justify $7.5 million being spent on this silly thing where they're going to have these shoes that have been rotting away in the weather for 5 years, the 215 tobacco ties that were going to be burned. So it's all falsehoods that they're using to, basically impose themselves on everyone. So like, just cut it out, do something that is valuable instead of, sucking money away from what's required to fix things in Calgary, which is like the water system and the homeless problem and the drug addicts and all these things. Like, why are we having tobacco ties and this stupid memorial, which is, not based on anything in reality? That's what they're doing. They're using this to transfer money, which is part of our concern. BC Archives has the marriage and death records to prove their history. The more educated the people become of our history and their own history and how researching, the more it will free us. Perhaps. I am asked, am I a materialist? Yes. I am a complete materialist. All that exists is matter. And there are no supernatural forces that exist. That's my position. But we could do a street epistemology session on it. I love street epistemology, spectrum street epistemology. For me, it's the way I can grapple with challenging ideas, and it's good too because it's degrees of certainty. So no one is, well, for my mats, which I'll get right now. Oh, keep going. They're just heavy. Oh. Oh, it's upside down. I just got these sent to me by Peter Boghossian and Reed Nicewonder. Anyway, they now have. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the one. There's the absolutely disagree and absolutely agree mats. That's an addition to the existing ones. And that's interesting because I don't know if I would ever be on absolutely agree or absolutely disagree. Because that means that I don't have room for people convincing me otherwise. And even with the two claims that I'm fighting for, which is the remains of 215 children have not been confirmed, and there's only two sexes, would I put myself on the absolutely agree mat? Those would be the ones that I would do that for. If and maybe I wouldn't. I would be nervous about it. It'd be something wouldn't say. So that's kind of interesting to see. Add that. So for people who are in Calgary, we're going to Fort Calgary on the confluence on March 27th, which is Friday, to observe and document and criticize the human spider web enactment by Mount Royal University. Because Mount Royal has been doing this now for 4 years, and they've been talking about it since 2020. And this is just an absurd destruction of Mount Royal to be doing this. And I want to talk about this, how indigenization is infantilizing the universities and having serious consequences in terms of our ability to discuss things. Anyway, I'm thinking of taking my mats to Fort Calgary on Friday, and just for people there to show what should be done at universities instead of this stupid human spider web enactment kind of thing. Anyway, if you're in Calgary, come down to Fort Calgary at 12 o'clock on Friday. A Christian king is protection. How so? Sometimes ideology doesn't matter if everyone's a corrupt sicko. Well, have you heard anything more about the Blacklocks report? I don't know if they've got all the documents. The ones that they did get were completely redacted, and I guess they're probably appealing, but that takes years to do that. So we already kind of, the fact that they redacted it all is just indicative again of the lack of transparency. It would have been nice to see what they were talking about, but I don't know if they've all been released yet. But I think there was a chunk of them that were all redacted. I highly recommend listening to the recent letter to King Charles by Church of England Bishop Dewar on the state of the Christian church in England. This impacts Canada. Okay. King Rothschild. Jesus is king. I looked up Bertrand Russell. He's pretty good. Yes, he's fantastic. He's one of my favorite authors. I'm voting yay on your material, Martini. This is your best show ever. This is the start of something. Yep, maybe. I don't know. And some people like the drinking, some people don't. But I think it's like, I'm not slurring my words or anything. I don't know why people get so offended. And, I think it makes me a little bit less inhibited, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It's hard to know. So we don't know it's true that we have absolute truth. Can you explain that? You said it's an argument. What is the argument then? Is it just intrinsic to humanity? Wow. That's a 12 rooster. That is a very first of all, I would argue that we never have absolute truth. Like, truth is like the extent to which our views correspond to reality. If they correspond completely, then that's absolute truth. And if they don't, then we don't have the entire truth. And that's humanity's situation, because we don't have all the evidence before us. Intellectual, I just can make a philosophical argument about it, but I don't. The question was something about how do we know that we have absolute truth? Like, it just is. It's a very complicated. It seems to me to be a very difficult thing to substantiate. Maybe I was a little bit too flippant about it. Becoming moralized requires creating our own narrative, not just reacting to theirs. Yeah, definitely. So what is our narrative? Like, that's a good question. What are we trying? And that's kind of what we're striving for. Oh. So I just skipped ahead here. Oh man, this always goes down. Charles Lakey converted to Islam in the 90s. Recently allowed Ramadan prayers in the cathedral castle. Oh my God, no! Say it isn't so. Oh, well, that doesn't mean that he's converted to Islam. That just means he's pandering. That's what these multiculturalists do, right? Is that they think that they're being nice and kind by allowing, the fox into the hen house. Like we're being kind to the fox, to allow the fox into the hen house, and then the fox, while we go away, goes and kills all the hens. This is we gotta keep the fox out of the hen house. Read the scripture for no. I'm not reading any scripture. Do all the universities in Canada get together to roll out their beliefs? to their students. There is a thing called Universities Canada, which is the organization of university presidents, and they do a lot of this kind of stuff. Technocracy would reject ethnicity, not stated. Okay. I'm studying the religion and technocracy situation, and I wish I had the answers. I'm pessimistic. Yeah. He's a bit of a hope. I met some young kids, about 17, a white boy and his 2 native girlfriends. They are all very, very much against the stuff being preached. Yeah, I've heard that the younger generation, I guess because, younger generations are by their nature kind of rebellious, and now they're rebelling against this, what was seen as being rebellious 20 years ago. We need a Bertrand Russell as a PM. Yeah, that would help. Embarrassed by it, and he felt forced to write in essays things he doesn't believe so that he can graduate. Yeah, that's really depressing, that kind of thing. To force people to write things that they don't believe. Or you have to do it to get by. It's really soul destroying when people make you do that. It just is the worst. And I believe it's Jeremy Bentham who, to get into, it was either Oxford or Cambridge, he was an atheist, and he was forced to say an oath to God. Like you were forced to do that to get into Oxford or Cambridge. And he said he never got over it for the rest of his life. It haunted him that he was forced to say something that he did not believe to be true. And we've got to think about this, people. We don't want to be doing this to people. This is just the worst. We want them to be able to state what they think they believe to be true. Don't respect evil. Jesus agrees. I don't know. How do we know that? Bishop, letter to the king. Okay. The tobacco ties look like the ghosts I made of Kleenex and a cotton ball when I was 5. Yeah, this is all infantilizing. It's terrible stuff. Agenda 2030. No, love is not matter. Yes, it is. Love is matter. It's chemical reactions which are matter. Very nice mats. Yeah, I love them. They're great. Although I liked my old ones, which had all the paint. They were vandalized by the gangsters in Winnipeg. They were special vandalized mats. And I'm upset about that. But I guess they'll be vandalized soon enough in some other skirmish. Hi, Francis. Too busy to catch all your shows, but I want to thank you for your hard work. Yes, thank you very much. It's good to know that it's not in vain. But I'm doing it. I'm doing it to survive. If people like what I do, then that's their thing. But I'm not trying to be popular. I understand there's a difference between popularity and validity. And I would rather be valid, embrace validity than popularity. But you get trapped. Obviously, you get trapped into it. The question is, why do you? My dog thinks you're yelling at me. Uh-oh. Yeah, well, I'm getting a little bit exuberant due to the martini. Hello and good afternoon, Canadian Spider-Man. It's worse than you think. Yeah, it probably is. Cheers, gotta fly. Your bookshelf fascinates me. I did a screen capture. Maybe share. Well, you shouldn't take it too seriously because it's not really. In fact, my most valuable books are not in this bookshelf because this is just putting books places where I can't. I don't have any. I think I used to have George Orwell prominently displayed here, but this is often like my history books and stuff. They're not, and there's a lot of anthropology that's in there. You're gaining traction. I am seeing less orange shirt rebuttals. Maybe they are running out of steam. Maybe. I'm hoping. It's kind of the super nanny approach. You just keep on moving, keep on carrying through with the discipline, and then the toddlers get tired. But it seems that the toddlers can become violent, I don't know what Super Nanny does about the violent toddlers. We can be confused by reality, drugs, and dreams. Maybe so. Yeah. Carry on. Yep. Might be only two-dimensional. I'm seeing less orange shirts on the FW threads and far more views. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's what science is saying. Does Albert have dementia? It's hard to know. It definitely the Lethbridge thing was bad because it was like out of our element, not in our usual area. You know, it's kind of a it's perhaps you have faith. Optimism is the faith in a more positive future. I don't have faith in a more positive future because I don't have the evidence to suggest that it's going to be a more positive future. In fact, the evidence suggests that it's going to be a more negative future. But remember, you're always in control of your own mind. So even if it's a more negative future, learn how to deal with it psychologically so that you can find a place for yourself and do what you can to improve things for other people. Like, I think that's key, is when we're productive, when we feel we're making a contribution, that's positive for people. When we get withdrawn and start thinking in terms of our own situation, that's when we become demoralized. So we need to draw connections with other people and figure out how to improve things and work with others to improve things, but we might not do it. The school teachers are unionized. I guess professors like yourself are. Yes, I am unionized. That's a big part of my story, is my unbelievably treacherous union, who is in fact responsible for my situation. They're the ones who got the university to go after me. That's how bad it is. But I will I will fight to the end of my days to hold them to account. What is your evidence that good is not absolute truth? Yeah, it's hard. Like, it's just like these are lifelong things which you cannot be summarized in a sentence. But we could have a street epistemology session on it. Unis have academic unions in Canada. They are not. Yes, Daniel knows. Daniel has had his own skirmishes with the unions. I don't like emotions, says Jared. Well, emotions, they're part of us. Like, they need to be managed. If we don't have emotions, we're not human. Believing in God is like wearing shoes. It's just better. Well, maybe so, but that doesn't make it true. It's a question of truth. It's not a question of whether it makes you feel good or not. Probably does make you feel good, but that's not what it's about. It's better to be unhappy and truthful than than untruthful and happy. So truthful and unhappy, than happy and untruthful. So that's the fight. The law of the king is Christian. The king is Christian. You guys and your religion, stop it. Stop the religion. People get annoyed about us talking about it. I'm happy to talk about it, but other people don't like it. You can't maintain. Okay, that's true. It's a personal choice. Okay, any last? We're not 1:15. We're over the. It's not unhappy hours. It's unhappy hour. So I'm going to end on the truth one, because for me, the pursuit of truth is the highest value. That's my idea. That I like. If anything, I can pursue the truth. Like, I can be in any situation and still pursue the truth. And why is truth your guiding force? Because it's what allows us to be tethered to reality and face things as they are. And figuring things out it seems to me to be just general human curiosity. Yeah. Curiosity, like trying to open that up. Like I find these sessions, the unhappy hour sessions, I find they're great because people just throw me these things out of left field, and I'm curious. I don't really know. I'm happy to say I don't really know about that. Maybe I need to think about that a little bit more. These are all very difficult questions. So, yeah. So guys, if you're in Calgary, you should come over to the Confluence at 12 o'clock. I think I'm going to bring my. These are heavy though. This is the thing. Could do some street epistemology at the Confluence. Hopefully my mats won't get stolen. That's the other thing I'm kind of worried about, is that I've already got a new set, right? So I had my mats, and then I got sent some more. And if I lose them, if I get them stolen again, then this is going to be an ongoing kind of situation. But hopefully, I don't think, but anyway, I want to kind of exhibit what I want to show this university, Mount Royal University, my wonderful institution that I loved and I helped to shape since 2008, is now in this horrible situation where they have students dressed up in orange shirts acting out a human spider web creation story that makes no sense, and everyone's just waving their arms around and everything. I want to show them that this is not the right path, and they should be doing the spectrum street epistemology on. We could even do it on the human spider web enactment. Is this a beneficial thing to do at a university? The human spider web enactment, and they're going to say they strongly agree because of X, Y, Z, and I'm going to say I strongly disagree because of this, and we can have a discussion. Okay, so Friday is the human spider web enactment. Going to do a live stream from Fort Calgary. Next Monday is going to be, I'm trying to do Mondays and Wednesdays videos, and then the unhappy hour, afterwards. So it's usually around 4:45. And then I've got the next segment of the countdown, which I'll do a video for on Wednesday, because that's my main thing right now, is that I would like to kind of draw attention to the Kamloops case that's coming up. We must have truth about Kamloops. And if we can't do it on the 5th anniversary, then we're not going to be able to do it. And it's the great opportunity. It's the best chance that we have to do it on the 5th anniversary. And I'm hoping. I was talking to Jim Heller, who's got the case against the Law Society, and I'm trying to kind of think of events to hold leading up to the 5th anniversary, so that we can have discussions about this deception that's going on, so there can be widespread understanding that this is a huge issue. And if we can't get this sorted, then Canada is not going to be a country worth living in. So thanks a lot for joining me. I know we went over time. I can't help myself. All these thought-provoking questions, especially the philosophical ones. I really enjoy this. For me, it's a high point of the day. So hope to see you next Monday right around, it'll probably be 4 o'clock. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.